Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode number 89. My guest in this episode is Behram Ghista, and Behram currently resides in India. However, he has traveled the world. He lived in Africa for a while and actually got a master's degree in graphic design in California in the United States. And he's trained under various Buddhist masters in different schools of Buddhism from India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Japan over a number of years. So we have a good conversation about his experience, his journey of life, and the services that he now provides. I will have a link to his website, innermasterynow.com, down below, and we find out from him in this interview what he provides in that website by way of his services. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. I enjoyed speaking with him and finding out about him as well as his practice. And I'd like to welcome Behram Ghista to the IdeaCast interview series. And I'm looking forward to an insightful conversation. I'll have questions for Behram, and he will have questions for me in what will be a dialectic or a dialogue that I think will be enjoyable for all of you in the audience. And I welcome everyone out there who's tuned into this conversation. I appreciate your company, and I know I speak for Behram when we hope that there is some value in this discussion that we're about to have. So Behram, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I enjoy hearing from people around the world and diverse ideas and thoughts, especially as they relate to wisdom traditions. So I'm looking forward to getting some insights from you about not just what you practice, but more broadly what's going on in your part of the world. And speaking of that, typically I like to find out from people their background story and where they come from. And you have quite an interesting and I would say diverse, I would call it a trail that you've traveled, a path that you've traveled from a young person into where we are right now in our conversation. So I think if we could be traditional for a moment and just explore that journey that brought you to where you are. We don't have to be comprehensive, of course, but if you want to just give us what you think would be important and relevant for what brought you to where you are now.
Thank you, Justin. I'd love to share. Sure. Okay, just a brief bio about me. I grew up in North India for 10 years, then in Africa for 12 years. And those first 22 years of my life were golden. Wine, women, and song. Lovely childhood I had. Then I went to the US for further studies. And there I faced an existential crisis. After the first year of being in college, I was in conflict with one of the faculty members. And that drove me into a deep depression. Fortunately, a friend of mine introduced me to a personal development seminar called EST training. For some of you who are old enough, you'll know what that is. It was called the Earhart Seminar Training, now known as Landmark Forum. I joined that training in January 1980, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Because in that seminar, I discovered my calling. Although I was in college training to be a graphic designer, once I did that training, I realized that graphic design was not my calling. My calling was to help people discover their strengths. And this because the trainer that I had during that seminar was an incredibly inspiring person, blue eyes, blonde hair. And I said to myself, while I used to watch him help all these people in the room who are suffering, help them to find their strengths, I said to myself that one day I will be like him. And I too will assist people to discover what is hidden in them and they don't even know about. And to this day, I've been following my calling. Because after graduation in 1983, I came back to India to look for teachers and teachings. And finally, I was authorized to teach in 1989 by one of my teachers. Since then, I've been traveling the world, giving talks, workshops, retreats, and here I am right now in front of a lovely person called Justin.
Thank you, sir.
So actually, the point of this little story is that many of us fear challenges. We don't like challenges, but we don't see that every challenge, even the worst challenges, have a blessing contained in them.
Mm.
And had I not had this difficulty with the faculty member, and my time there was golden, I don't know where I would be today. So because of this difficulty that I had, I was pointed into looking at myself more deeply. And I am so grateful for the conflict that I had with this fellow. So deeply grateful. Challenges can be a blessing when approached correctly. That's the point of this little story. Yes, Justin.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I like to say for my own life that when something negative happens or what we would call a bad experience comes into our life, that sometimes it's a master showing up to give you a lesson that you may not want to deal with, but it's there for you. Yeah. You can put it off, go ahead, but the master will come back. So I love how you frame that adversity or what we would call an unfortunate or undesirable situation can be for our benefit. It can be a teacher that can and it changed your trajectory and brought you to where you are in your life. And your training was diverse. I know in a print article that I read, an interview, you had stated that your time in Japan, you felt as though your soul had come home. And so you have not one, but multiple facets to your practice and that which you have mastered. So I appreciate that there's multiple perspectives in approaching a concept or a practice. If you want to speak to that, you can. If not, we can.
I trained with the Tibetan masters, and then I decided to go to Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Japan to discover the teachings from different angles. Then came back to India again, and it gave me a broad understanding of how or what the Buddha taught. Yes, it was important for me to do that.
I agree. I think, again, wisdom traditions can become diluted, if that's not too judgmental of a word. I'm thinking of Christianity and all the sects of Christianity that are out there, and the same thing. And I'm very ignorant of Buddhism, but I do see that there are multiple schools or teachings and perspectives. And so for you to be able to move around and see it from different perspectives, I think is essential. I think to have a sort of synthesis project where you can find the universality in all the teachings, all the different branching that has occurred, and just grounding yourself in what seems to be core to those teachings.
Yes,
if I'm addressing
invaluable. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. This is going to be a real free-flowing dialogue. So I want to hand it over to you. And what would you like to open with in terms of importance and value in our dialogue? What would you like to address?
I'd like to address challenges and how best to work with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shall I begin?
Yeah. In fact, I won't even ask you a question related to that. I'll give you the floor or the microphone, as it were, and you start. And then if I have a question, I'll ask you a question related to it. Okay.
Okay. No matter how well we live, no matter how selfless our actions may be, we all have to face and surmount challenges. A life without challenges, please understand, is not an option available to anybody, nobody. Even spiritual giants had to face and surmount challenges. So we can't vote them out of existence. We can't run from them. We can't hide from them? No, because wherever we go, challenges will be present. So when a challenge comes galloping towards us, it is not right for us to think that nature has made a mistake and the challenge belongs to somebody else, such as possibly the neighbor next door who plays loud music till late at night. I'm a good person, he should suffer. Yeah, no, nature does not make such mistakes. Nature is precise and orderly. So, another thing, it is not right for us to assume that life is difficult, because the truth of the matter is that we are being difficult with life by not learning to flow in harmony with it. Its principles, its laws, we're not learning to flow in harmony with it. So the difficulties in our lives which arise are the inevitable consequence of doing things the wrong way. So when those difficulties arise, it's best to embrace them in a calm and gentle manner and transform them to our advantage, like I did. Well, I wasn't really calm, but I transformed the difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
But when we meet with difficulties with resentment and blame and so on, we only compound our suffering even more. Not the best option. Every difficulty that comes our way because we have sown the seeds, unwholesome seeds, at some point in our past. And nature knows when exactly those seeds will be harvested by us. So to attract a better reality, we require to be, it's imperative for us to be a better person. Because a better person is one that is in flow with life. And therefore their actions come back to bless them instead of haunt them. Yeah. Now, to be a better person is easier said than done because it requires deep learning. And deep learning is really not so simple. I'll explain why in this little talk. Our best learning comes through a direct experience. Yeah, we do not learn to ride a bicycle by reading books. We have to get on the bike, fall a few times till we get our balance. We observe what works, we observe what doesn't work. Through trial and error, direct learning, we learn best. Another example, you come home from college or school and you tell your mother that you just smoked some weed and she flips out. Well, there's direct learning right there because you know that these are not the kind of issues you talk to with your mother about, yeah? But if your mother says, oh, darling, really? Wow, that's interesting. Tell me about it. And she doesn't judge you. She's accepting of your freedom to explore life. Then through direct experience, you know what you can talk to with your mother. Yeah, we learn best through direct experience. Right. But the thing is, the challenge here is that we don't always directly experience the consequences of many of our decisions. So there's no trial and error learning there. So how do we learn? Do you know what I'm pointing at, Justin? There are many instances in life where there is no direct experience of the consequences. So we can't really modify ourselves, modify our approach. An example, smoking, drinking, taking drugs, for example. Yeah, the direct consequences are not available to us right now because these consequences lie in a distant future. We don't get lung cancer immediately. We don't destroy our liver immediately. We don't get an overdose from a drug immediately. But these consequences, they arise in a distant future And because they're in a distant future, we can't really learn best from there is no direct experience. Sorry for the cough. Lovely pollution here. We all have a learning horizon. We all have a learning horizon within which we can determine the pleasant and unpleasant consequences related to our actions. Yeah, we all have a learning horizon within which we can know that this action is wholesome and this action is unwholesome. We know, for instance, that killing someone will lead to dire consequences. We know that robbing a bank also will not lead to pleasant consequences. We can imagine, even though it's not a direct experience, we can imagine things because we have that learning horizon within which we can determine how our choices will pan out. But when our actions and their consequences, actually, when the consequences of our actions reach beyond the learning horizon, it's impossible to learn from direct experience or even imagine what can happen. When the consequences reach beyond the learning horizon, think of the people who boarded the Titanic. Could even one of them imagine the tragedy that was going to befall them? Yeah, learning horizon. So this is the core learning dilemma all of us face, that we learn from direct experience, but we never really get to experience directly the consequences, the major consequences of most of our actions, because these consequences lie in a distant future, a future that's invisible to us now. It's not even within our frame of reference to contemplate. The person we choose to marry, our choice of career, the friendships we rely on, and our chosen lifestyle, 4 major choices we make. 4 major choices that determine the quality and the climate of our lives for years to come. And yet, these are the very types of actions and choices that leave no room for trial and error learning. And yet we need deep learning to make sure that we're in flow with life. So Justin, how do we make better decisions then?
In listening to what you've said, if you don't mind my sort of amending a thought to what you've said to answer your question, is that at least where in the West, in my culture, we tend to deny or deflect our responsibility for actions and behaviors. So I think that adds another component to what you're addressing here, and that the reconciliation of those deflections and those bypassings of responsibility compounds, I think, what you're putting forward here. So I'll add that as an amendment, and then can you re-ask the question, and then I'll address it. I derailed myself by giving you that little just what I'm feeling from what you said. But ask the question again, and I'll answer it. I'm sorry.
Before I ask the question, should I just say what I said earlier? That these are very important decisions that we make. The person we choose to marry, and so on. Yeah. But we can see how many dysfunctional relationships there are on the planet. Mm-hmm. We can see how many people are miserable in their jobs, even though they're making millions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And friends which we rely on, we hear stories of my best friend ran away with my spouse. Yeah. So how do we make better decisions so that we are in flow with life and we don't attract the hounds of hell to come and bite us on our butt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think my answer to you would be a continuation of that insight or that thought that I was sharing with you, and that the decisions that we make are obfuscated. The thinking is not pure thinking, I guess, or the right way of thinking. When we enter into a contract such as a marriage or an obligation or commitment to a career or a job, what are our reasons for entering into those? Are we entering into a marriage because our partner is sexy or has a good social status, or rather than marrying that partner because they are true to you and they want to be in right relation with you, if I could borrow a Buddhist term, but so in other words, our motives for the decisions we make, are they corrupted? So I'll ask that. I'll answer that maybe as a question to you, and see what you think of that.
Life is extremely illusory, extremely. And for us to be receptive to its hidden dimensions always requires an intuitive approach, not an intellectual or an emotional one. Because our intellect and emotions don't always work in our favor. In fact, on many occasions, our intellect and emotions create more suffering than they cure. Whereas intuition has the full support of the universe. Okay? Mm-hmm. Just think, look at the world around you, the wars, the abuse, the destruction of the planet. Is this an intuitive approach, or is it greed and false reasoning that there's profit in scamming people, there's profit in destroying things? Is that intuitive, or is it intellectual and emotional? The people destroying the planet, please understand, are very intelligent people. They come from Ivy League colleges, the cream of the crop. But their intelligence is not used skillfully because there's no integrity within themselves. They're destroying the planet. There's no intuition. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Same with the choice of partner, same with the choice of career. It's like Justin was saying, like you were saying, Justin, we make these choices based on emotions and false reasoning. Oh, this person is so rich, I'll be comfortable, I'll be happy. But then you'll be in a golden cage, most likely. Right? Now, why do you think, Justin, why is it that we are not intuitively inclined when that is the way to go, to live a beautiful, flourishing life? Why are we not intuitively inclined?
I hate to keep bringing up the dichotomy of the West versus perhaps the East. I don't think there's really a boundary there, but I'll use this as a means, excuse me, of maybe relaying my thought. And so in my cultural sphere, the Western mindset is that, and you pointed to this, this I think cuts to the core, that we objectify and commodify things. That we see things as objects, as being separate from us, so that we can commodify them. We commodify each other. Somebody rents themselves out to me to work for me. But anyway, I see that kind of perspective, that rather than seeing the earth as our system, our ecology that sustains us and keeps us alive, it is to be exploited. So that's an example, perhaps. So in other words, to get to the question you asked me, I think we lens things, or our perspective on things is not in good faith in the relationship that we have. So it's a one-way street, and I speak for at least Western culture in that regard, that we exploit things because it will bring us profit that we think is profit. So maybe if that's an answer, I'll leave that.
Thank you. Yes, that is good. But there's also something else. The reason one mega reason why we are not intuitively inclined is because there is no aspiration which we underrate as excessively, devalue as excessively as the aspiration to be wise and loving. Yeah. And yet, it is wisdom and love that make life supremely enriching. They place us in harmony with natural laws and processes and safeguard us from making disastrous choices that come back to haunt us. Yeah, wisdom and love. There's no aspiration that is so underrated, so devalued as the aspiration to be wise and loving. But then, Brother Justin, it is extremely unwise for us to not see the value in this, because the consistent deferring of wisdom and love eventually becomes a learning disability. You know what a learning disability is, Justin? Please describe.
I have dyslexia, so I'm painfully aware of what learning disabilities are from my own life experience. But yeah, it is it's an obfuscation. There's a barrier there between the relationship you're having with X, with whatever, and a clearer understanding of what that relationship is. It's an inability to relate or to work with.
Okay,
would be my answer. Yeah.
A learning ability is when we fail not only to learn from our mistakes, but also neglect to learn from the mistakes of those around us. That's a learning disability. And therefore, we perpetuate our wrongdoing till the end of our days, because we fail to see. We can't recognize, because we're living unconsciously, basically, right? Let me give you an example of a learning disability. During my years of practice in the mountains here, before I was authorized to teach, I was doing lots of solitary retreats in the Himalayas. And there I made friends with a builder when I was living in the cottage on the outskirts of one of the towns. He was a builder, a strapping young Indian fellow, rode a Royal Enfield, had a wife and two lovely boys, 11 and 12 years old. But in his pocket, he always had a pack of cigarettes, and on his lips, he was fagging away. So after I got to know him a little better, I asked him, listen, don't you think you should be cutting down on all this smoking? You have a lovely wife and kids you should be thinking of. And his answer to me was, Behram, look at my chest, I'd hardly cough. Cigarettes don't harm me. Fine, I chain smoke, but it's okay. I'm okay. And whenever I saw him, I would point it out, but he would just not listen. He was determined to believe what he wanted to believe. Then I was back in this town again. It's called, the hill station is Manali, North India. I was back there when I was teaching. I was renting a retreat center. 5 years I rented it there. In 1998, I was back over there. And I went to see where this guy is, just to say hi to him. And I was dismayed at the fact that there he was, lying in bed, shriveled up, dying of lung cancer. And I said to him, listen, my friend, what happened to you? He said, oh, Behram, you and so many friends used to tell me about my smoking, but I never listened to anyone. And this is the consequence. But there's one thing I'm happy about. And his two boys were standing on my right side. He said, I've made my boys promise me that they will never touch a cigarette. And they have given me their word of honor. And the boys, yes, yes, yes. No smoking, no. Oh, very good, very good. Anyway, that conversation ended. The next day when I was in town, guess what I saw? Our two friends walking down the street, bagging away. This is a clear example of seeing the truth, but acting without any reference to it. That's called a learning disability, Justin.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing their father dying in front of their eyes. And they believe, like their father believed, that smoking is fine with me. I'll be okay. That's a learning disability which arises with the differing of wisdom and love. So, how do we correct ourselves? How do we get back on track? It is through personal refinement. It is through personal refinement that we bring out the wisdom and the love that is already there, but which at present is suppressed with all the wrongdoing we engage in unconsciously. Nobody consciously wants to die of lung cancer, but they do things unconsciously and they suffer the consequences. So three things have to come together for us to change our trajectory from suffering mode into magnificent mode. Three things. Can you tell me, Justin? Let's start with the first one. What has to happen? The first thing, first to change the trajectory from an average life into a fantastic one.
I keep bringing up the term perspective. And much like you when you were in university in California, someone entered into a relationship with you to change your perspective. And they showed up as your teacher, even though it was an unpleasant experience, so that you were able to have that perspectival shift. And so I would offer that perhaps as the first of three steps that you're mentioning, that a reframing of things, of seeing things differently, breaking you out of your habit, your pattern, your slumber or whatever. Just like those two children of the man dying of cancer, they were in their slumber. They weren't awake and aware. He was, after he was already on the way out.
Already gone.
He was already just all but dead. So yeah, that I would offer that as a first step, perhaps.
Okay. Actually, Justin, the first step, that could be the first step, yes.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be in an order, but just that's a step that I would offer.
Right. The first step, as I've understood things, is honesty. We have to be totally honest with our current reality. Yeah, because unless we are honest with the fact that regardless of our intelligence, our accomplishments, our acquisitions, our affluence, regardless of all these things, we are still anxious, we're still depressed, we still get scared of things. Yeah. So that undiluted honesty has to take place for us to change direction. Because if we do not know our current position, nobody can help us. For instance, a friend invites you to her summer house, which you've never been to before. Yeah, it's out there in the countryside. And there you are driving along, trying to find the place, and you're lost. So you stop the car and you call your friend and say, hey, darling, I'm a little lost. I'm going around in circles. Can you direct me to where you are? And what would be the first question your friend would ask, Justin?
Where are you?
Absolutely. Where are you? And you say, oh, well, there's a large rock on my right side, and there's some clouds on my left side, and there's a nice tree over there. You don't know your position. How will your friend guide you? If you don't know your current position, nobody can help you. If you don't acknowledge your current position, no one can help you. So that's the first thing. We have to come of age to say, enough is enough. So that's the first requirement. The second requirement is And it flows from the first, that we have to be willing to do whatever it takes to change direction. And that means we have to be willing to go through some pain and discomfort, because change is not possible without pain and discomfort. And we reach this point only when we are sick and tired of being tired and sick. That's when we are ready to discover what can yet be possible for us. Otherwise, we live in denial our entire lives. Take some drugs, go on vacations, shopping sprees, eat some more, drink some more, just suppress. So that suppression is a denial of our situation, and therefore there's no incentive for positive change. Yeah? So honesty is required, first of all, that we are lost. We need guidance. We've tried it our way for so many years, and we're still a little bit in a mess. And now we've come of age to be willing to do whatever it takes. Then the third thing happens, Justin, what you talked about. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. Yeah, that's when you connect with someone, a friend, a coach, whoever, who guides us in the right direction towards making better life choices. These three things have to come together. And in that direction, when we meet someone, we need a living person, not with videos and not with books. We need live reality to change direction. Yeah? When that person comes into our life, he or she makes us understand what the winner's edge is about. And the winner's edge is in the inputs. It's not in the outcomes, it's in the inputs. Because if the inputs are correct, the outcomes will be brilliant. But if we focus only on the outcomes and not on the inputs, that's where the difficulties arise. For instance, you're looking for a beautiful partner to spend your life with, and you're fortunate enough to find someone, a gorgeous person to live with. But if the input in the relationship from your side is arrogant, insensitive, and so forth, that input will drive that person away. So it's not the outcome. The outcome, I want to be with a partner. But unless the input is correct, the outcome will not really serve you. We want a great job. But if the input is not correct, that great job will lead to a bypass surgery. Right? So reflections that come from better sources lead to deeper and richer thoughts. The person who builds better habits has a better life. The person who invests in love and caring for people around them has better relationships. It's always in the inputs. That's the choice which most people are not making. They want things, but they don't see is their involvement with the things that really makes the difference. Right? People want to be happy. They want to make money. But if the input is incorrect, that money will be a source of major suffering. So the best inputs come from a calm and clear mind. Because it is from a calm and clear mind that we are able to optimize our lives. And to optimize something means to make as perfect and as functional and as extraordinary as possible to optimize. And the best way to optimize our life is to understand that meaning is far more important, far healthier than the happiness we derive from the fleeting pleasures and pastimes we generally marinate ourselves in. Meaning, for most people, I'm sure, Justin, in your part of the world, well, globally, people are doing things without any deep purpose to their lives. There's no meaning to their existence. That's what leads to the anxiety and the depression and the loneliness and the conflicts. No meaning. So, while pleasures and pastimes wax and wane, meaning, please understand, not only lasts a lifetime, but it also promotes the growth and expansion of our consciousness for living a life that is worthy of us. When we live a life that is worthy of us, before you know it, life starts to reveal its magnificence to us. That's when we start to dwell in glorious moments that stretch into a lifetime. Otherwise, without deep meaning, without personal refinement, no matter what we achieve, no matter what we do, it is not satisfying. I've lived in the West for years. There's so much there. There's so much abundance there, Justin. You have electricity, you have running water, hygienic conditions. The roads are good, no potholes, lovely homes. And yet, the 5 years, for instance, that I spent in Los Angeles, I saw misery around me. Monumental misery, regardless of the achievements. So, life is filled with challenges. The greatest challenge is to learn how to make clear choices that will bless us and those around us. Selfish living is no real living. We need to wake up. Yes, Justin, do you have a question?
I may be speaking for some people in the our viewers in the audience in the first phase, rather, or the first part of our transition, which is to enter into honesty. What would you say is that catalyst that wakes us from that slumber of self-deception? Do we do it spontaneously? I imagine some people it happens, but I think a lot of us, what breaks us out of that slumber, wakes us up to the idea that we are living in self-deception, that we are, if you'll forgive my Western phrase, bullshitting ourselves into thinking that we are being honest with ourselves. You know, the circularity of this kind of telling a story that we tell ourselves that we're fine, everything's okay. But how do we first realize that we are waking out of that self-deception, and then how do we understand the authenticity of the honesty in the realization of honesty of what it is we're being honest about in ourselves?
Possibly two things, Justin. The first, like you said, you come across a friend, possibly, or somebody who makes you realize that you are bullshitting yourself. Mm-hmm. And you have come of age to be willing to listen to your friend. And therefore, like I was willing to listen to my friend and take that course, which transformed my life, fine, that's one thing. The second thing is you have to go through enough pain. You have to be sick and tired of being tired and sick to say, okay, enough is enough. I need to get out of this. Like so many people who go to rehab, it's so many celebrities. They have so much going for them. And yet they go into the slump of drugs and alcohol and whatever it is. Then they need to go to rehab. Finally, they come to realize that this is not serving me. So that honesty comes from both sides. Either when we see the light or when we feel the heat.
It's almost as though all three of those modes or phases of transition that you've described can dance with each other at times.
Yes,
it's not always cut and dry linearity.
Absolutely. Yes.
I think that strikes me as important for the audience, and thank you for pointing that out. That we don't. It's not, again, like most Western thing, it's a set of instructions. There's the first set of instructions, the first dictation, the second dictation. This is a little more, and I think,
yes,
well, just learning to have that awareness that it isn't cut and dry, that it's responsive, that you want to open up that intuitive, as you say, aspect of yourself to be aware of what your relationship is, what's going on, maybe.
But the main point here I would like to underscore is that this is not a self-help is good, but we need someone else to guide us with the self-help. We need a living person, not videos, not books.
Right.
They can take us only so far, not further. So it's best to open ourselves to those in our neighborhood who could really guide us.
Now, you've brought up something that I wanted to address with you, and I'll beg your patience on this, and that we can have an honest conversation about this, that there are globally, this isn't just a Western phenomenon, but there are people who show up as gurus, as teachers, as sages, and I'll indict my culture that they are there for reasons beyond this honest three-phase relationship, and that they're there to make money. They're there to sell books. They're there to have an audience and to be a projection of deification onto themselves by the audience. How would you suggest that somebody knows, or what is a good way to filter for a right teacher, a teacher that is there in equal honesty, equal sincerity, and some of it is obvious. Like if somebody's charging you $1,500 or $2,000 a week to parrot things that have been wisdom traditions for thousands of years, that's a clue. But I think there are smaller, less obvious things where there may be a community of 30 or 40 people and there's a guru. So how do you screen for or be the detective that can understand that you are in right relation with this teacher that shows, the good teacher that shows, not the person that gives you drama that shifts your trajectory, but like a good teacher, someone who is there in good faith with you?
Beautiful question, Justin. Beautiful question. Now, the thing is, I get asked this question lots of times. Justin, my man, in every profession, you will have weirdos, every profession. Yeah, whether it is doctors, lawyers, architects, wherever you go, the majority of beings are not authentic. And the same applies to spiritual teachers. Yeah, because they're not like a separate crowd trying to rob you. Everyone's doing it. Everybody's doing it. Right? So when I came back from when I left the US in '83 and came back to India looking for teachers and teachings, I had to wade through dozens of weirdos, real nutcases, before I met the right teachers. Yeah, we all have to go through that. You don't find gold, Justin, just by digging here and there. To find gold, you have to put in the hard yards. You have to get lost. You have to get confused. You have to get betrayed. You have to get scammed. But if you believe, sincerely believe that you have it in you to find the right teacher, you will. 100% you will. Yeah. Just like, well, over here, well, not just here. I've been to several dentists, yeah, in Bangalore, where I'm here, in Mumbai, and I've come across some really good ones. But I've also come across dentists who have told me that I had gum disease when I didn't have it. And I had a second opinion and just said, no, nothing. Oh, you need a cavity, you need a root canal just to make money. Yeah. It's in every profession, Justin. Every profession you have to wade through unauthentic people till you find the right ones. Finally, now we've found some incredibly good dentists over here, but it requires a little effort. Just like in selecting your car or in selecting whatever it is, you have to go through a little bit of suffering first. So but perhaps, as long as you believe, you have to believe that they're there. Not that, oh, don't throw the baby with the bathwater. Yeah.
Right.
There are some few authentic beings like gold. You don't find it all over the place, but you have to dig a lot of dirt out before you find the gold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the process we all have to go through.
And in going through that process, perhaps that each time we find a piece of dirt, that we understand how we found that dirt, why we found the dirt, and so, as you were saying, entering into honesty versus deception, that we peel a layer of that deception back and say, this is a clue, and so this guru, and now I understand what was it about that guru, that, or that dentist or lawyer or doctor or Indian
Correct.
chief or whatever.
You gain through experience.
Right. So there's a learning process there.
You can then detect the charlatans from the ones who are really authentic.
Mm-hmm. So if you are still in
go through that experience.
Yeah. So if you're still lensing through self-deception, you're going to keep getting the same shitty guru over and over again. Whereas if you clear your lens up a little bit, then you'll see, it's almost like, as you pointed out, dating a person, entering into a relationship with somebody.
Absolutely.
If you date a jerk, start figuring out why you keep bringing jerks into your life, right? Same thing. Okay. See, I just, again, for the audience and for myself, how do we know we're entering into a courtship or the early stage of developing a relationship in an honest and healthy way, so that they are a good master, a good teacher, and not the one that feels bad and takes your money from you and leaves you stranded, that kind of thing. So thank you. I think that's critical. Because again, I've known people and I've done it myself throughout my whole life, where you are seeking something. And to compound that, some people are sick, some people are dying, and they're desperate, and they throw their money at people who make these outrageous claims. And I think that's another thing, is that we are in that state of vulnerability, and that doesn't afford us the right lensing to have the clarity. So there's a huge caveat there. So thank you for referencing the fact that it's all disciplines. It can be any mode of relation that we enter into.
But another thing, Justin, if I can, that's where intuitive living comes in.
Mm-hmm.
To see through the delusions, through the illusions. But we have to start the ball game, stop relying on reason and logic all the time, or the emotions, and start to learn how to be intuitive. And then wildest things open up for us.
I think you said in one of your... I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's also deceptive, especially in choosing our life partner. In the beginning, wow, what a lovely person. A year later, you're divorcing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so intuitive living is absolutely a must. We have to train ourselves to live intuitively, not just through reason and logic. It's deceptive. It has only a certain bandwidth, not wide enough.
And the marriage of the intellect and the intuition, or the dance, or the appropriate tension and relationality
Right.
is in play there. There's a time when you have to employ your intellect for whatever reason, and then you have to have your heart and your intuition on board to do that. And I was starting to say, there was a statement you made in one of your videos on your YouTube channel, and it said our character is our identity. I mean, and our identity can be mirrored by the other. Our identity shows up as another sometimes, especially in personal relationships. At least that's my
Correct.
my
Yes.
If I could ask you a very broad question,
Please.
as it relates to the wisdom tradition of Buddhism and perhaps the Hindu wisdom tradition, and I think we're sorely lacking in, again, I hate the dichotomy, but the Western perspective is the seeming paradox, the seeming contradiction. But yet, if you learn to frame paradox and contradiction through another lens, that you can hold those contradictions and paradoxes in an appropriate tension, in a means that they do make sense, and that's not binary, not a hard no, a hard yes. Do you want to speak to that, where we could learn to see in what, again, I'll use a really dramatic example where everything is nothing and nothing is everything. And in Western minds, it's like, it's impossible. How can everything be nothing? Well, if everything is everything, then there is no thing. So I mean, and that's dramatic, but I mean, in more mundane daily living, we tend to compartmentalize things and put them into a binary or a dichotomy. And so how would you help us to understand the need for paradox, the need for contradiction, to make sense? I know it's a really kind of off the wall question, but I think it can be helpful in this describing honesty of self and deception of self, and then entering into relation with others, and finding our appropriate path with a teacher, etc.
Let me see if I can answer your question from this other perspective. If I haven't, I'll try another approach. Yeah.
Okay.
People ask me, how do you cultivate intuition? Do you want to say something on that, or shall I?
No, please. Yeah, please.
Intuition, first of all, is not impulsiveness. Okay, it's a very clear seeing of a reality which is indisputable. When a doctor, for instance, a person who is really authentic, who has really his or her heart in what she's doing to serve the people, wants to find a cure for his particular illness, and they study and they research and they study, but they don't get the answers with their intellect. Yeah. And one day, maybe they're jogging, maybe they're bathing, maybe they're brushing their teeth, woof, an insight appears, a clear understanding of what's required to cure this particular illness. Yeah, that's an intuitive insight, an inner tuition, inner tuition. But it comes through deep thought, deep study, focused attention. So to be intuitive in relation to life's many illusions requires the deep study and practice of the Dharma, what the Buddha of Buddhism calls the Dharma. Yeah, the Dharma, the word Dharma comes from the root to support, that which gives birth to. Yeah, so when we study the Dharma, we're studying the laws that give birth to this entire cosmos, the laws and principles which give birth to our suffering, and the laws and principles which give birth to our freedom from suffering. When we study the Dharma deeply, that's when we are intuitive, and we can see through life's many illusions. Otherwise, we can't. A tennis player, a professional who is dancing on the court effortlessly, he's not really thinking then. He's intuitively flowing because of deep practice. Deep learning, deep practice makes us intuitive. Shallow thinking, a shallow life locks us in our delusions. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
You have, in the context of what we've been discussing. That's beautiful. That's perfect. Because again, what I just took away from what you said is that when we lens life through the intellect and the ego, that the intuition is counterintuitive. It is something we should avoid. So the intellect and the ego is saying, make all the money you can, and don't let any of it go, or hold on to this, hold on to that. And the intuition is like, if you just give that money to that person, you're going to change a life forever. Or if you give away your gold, whatever, to somebody so that they can start over again, you never know what will be created from that. And that's where the intuition would seem paradoxical to somebody who is deeply embedded in their ego or their intellect. So yes, you did. You responded to what I was sort of circling around. So thank you. Yeah. And go ahead.
If I can just give one example from my life. In January 1980, I did the EST training. And then I started meditating for 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening, fanatically. Yeah, with deep love and dedication to the practice. And within 6 months, I experienced my first insight. And to experience an insight, you can't buy it. Even $1 billion can't buy it. You have to create the conditions within yourself to see life from a perspective that goes beyond this conscious mind, right? So from then onwards, I started to live intuitively. But even though I was living intuitively, there's still fear involved sometimes in certain decisions. So towards the time I was graduating and I was going to come back to India, my intuition was telling me, you need to go back and you will not work once you go back. You will let life support you. Very scary decision. Yeah. Where will the money come from? How will I live? I lived outside of India for close to 18 years. I didn't even know the language properly anymore. Yeah. I was coming back to almost a foreign country and no introductions to which teacher to go to, who to find. And so I used to weep and wail in the nights, talking to the good Lord. How will I manage? And my intuition kept telling me, you will be supported. You have to trust. You will be supported. You will not work because you cannot ride two horses at the same time or chase two rabbits at the same time. So finally, I said, okay, I dedicate myself to life. I surrender. Yeah, that's intuition guiding us. And when we surrender, Justin, I tell you, the wildest things open up for us.
Mm-hmm.
Came back to India. I had hardly any money. I was staying in forests and jungles and caves. I couldn't afford a proper place to stay. But the wildest ways in which I was held and supported and not harmed. And there are wild animals out there, bears and panthers and snakes and things, not harmed. So intuition sometimes asks us to do things which are not easy, but the fruits of following that calling are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But if I let my reason and logic say, but you have to make money, you have been trained, you have a master's degree in design, my parents were upset. Which parents want you to go into the jungle and practice after they, paid your fees for so many years?
Yeah.
So I didn't allow my reason and logic to deter me from my choice. And here I am today, absolutely in love with life, Justin. And the wildest things open up for me. There's no boredom in my life. But for most people who have everything, they're still bored.
Yeah. The illusion.
Yep.
And with honesty, I think you find that trust bond with yourself, with your willingness to take that step into the void or the step off, into something that you can't control, that trust and married with the honesty is again an appropriate perspective to get you to wherever. Yeah. Don't put it. One thing I like is not expecting an outcome, just be immersed in the process and stop obsessing over the outcome.
Yes. The inputs.
Yeah. And that's like you said, you were living in nature and you didn't know where the hell you were going, but you trusted that whatever the outcome was appropriate. And it was what your next step in the path was. And I think that's something that's hard for a lot of people to overcome, but I think, again, there's steps prior to that will give you that assistance and that guidance to have that courage to do that.
I was willing to do whatever it takes, even if I had to give up my life. I was willing to do it.
Yeah, that's
to wake
faith.
Up, I was willing to do it.
That's faith. If that's not faith, I don't know what. Faith in you, faith in the will, the unseen will that might be luring you into your future. Yeah, whatever's going on, if you have faith in that, I think you're right. I think it beats the hell out of being a rock star that's drug addled and has all the money and everything they could want, but their life is a shitstorm. That's the illusion. I think it's a good caveat. They're there to teach us a lesson, like you said. You learn from the others, and what a great teacher. People who have done terrible things and have had tragic lives. When other lives could have been had by their person, their beingness. is, like you said earlier, it's a great way to learn without getting hurt yourself, and that's a discipline in its own right. So, Master B, we've given the audience a lot of information. I almost think this might be a good place to rest, but I want to ask you if there's anything else you'd like to share or present. We can continue on for a few more minutes, but I wanted to see if there was something of importance that you would like to share or bring forward before we wrap up the conversation.
Well, actually, Justin, thank you for asking. I do have a saying I forget who said it, but it is brilliant, which I've tattooed in my consciousness, which I would like to share with your audience. Yeah. Okay. Here's what it says. No great deed is done by falterers who ask for certainty. Don't waste time dreaming of obstacles that may never arise or in crossing bridges you have not reached. The best way to conquer circumstances is to be a greater circumstance yourself, because man is not the creature of circumstances. Circumstances are the creatures of men. Backed by a resolute determination, there's nothing impossible for those who will try. And that's what I would like to add. Life is challenging, but believe in yourself that you have hidden resources that are equal to any challenge. Get out there and serve the world. And there's no greater fulfillment than that.
Thank you. I wanted to give a little pause of silence for that. One thing I like to use for my own mental model is when we talk about intelligence and wisdom is, I'll use a modern allegory, but if we build a race car, we have a 1,200 horsepower engine and a perfectly mated transmission and a drivetrain and tires and everything to get that car to go 250 miles an hour or 350 kilometers an hour, everything you need to get that thing going as fast as you can, off the start as fast as you can. And you build that machine and you get in the machine and you hit the gas pedal and you go, but you didn't think about putting brakes and steering on that vehicle. That to me is a good analogy for wisdom is your brakes and your steering. And so that'll be my little kernel of, that for me, it's cheesy, but it doesn't compare to what you just said. But that's one thing I'll add as an amendment is that when we think about crafting our vehicle of awareness, that we can be as you said earlier, we can be pure, one of the most intelligent people in the world, and we're good at executing functions, and general intelligence is no problem. But if there is no wisdom, if there is no intuition that helps cultivate that wisdom, then you're driving 300 miles, 250 miles an hour with no brakes and no steering. And who wants that?
We become our own worst nightmare.
Yeah, because it's a very unpleasant thought to be traveling without control.
Right.
So anyway, I just wanted, it's a different thing, but I just wanted to amend that. But Master B, I really appreciate this conversation. I think it was pure. I think it was good faith. It was from the heart. And I do appreciate that. I will have, for the audience, I will have all contact information and relevant social media access for Master B down below. And please continue your discovery of his work. You are someone who can be contacted, you can engage with in teaching and mentoring. And so that will be available through his website. You can find that out. So I wanted to make sure that you all know about that. I want to thank the audience as well for your time, and I hope this helps you. This is one of those experiences that can shift your trajectory a little bit, or just a tool that you can put in your toolbox to carry forward in your movement into the future. So thank you, Master B, for those final words. That was great. It was profound. The whole conversation. Absolutely. I'm in gratitude for our getting together. You're always welcome back. So perhaps we can take on another matter in another conversation, and continue the flow, because that's what my show is about. It's about just unveiling things and helping us to flourish and to be Yeah. So
Thanks,
again,
Jackson.
YouTube audience, thank you so much. Master B, thank you for your time and thank you for your
Listen,
input.
thank you guys for listening.
Yes. And take care until the next conversation. And Master B, I'll say goodbye to you after we're done recording. But thank you again, YouTube audience. Take care.
Bye. Bye. Hallelujah.